Good evening, everybody. I hope you all are back in front of your screen because we are starting with the last session for the day with Delhi chapter about data-driven approach to retrospectives. And we have Sandhya Bayana to talk about this topic. She's an agile project manager at Cvent. And without any further ado, I would like to call upon Jyoti, who is going to facilitate this session along with Sandhya to present our session. So over to you, girls.
Thank you, Nupur. So, hi everyone. My name is Jyoti, and I am a volunteer of Delhi chapter. I come with 10 years of experience managing and leading project in software testing space, and have recently transitioned to senior Scrum Master. And here, Sandhya, she is my mentor. She is training me and mentoring me for this role. Coming over to the topic, data driven approach to retrospective. So have you ever guys thought, why do we have different ceremonies like daily stand-ups, you have grooming, you have planning, sprint reviews, and retrospectives? So when we talk about Scrum, we know it talks about transparency, courage, inspection, and adaptation. So these are those events or ceremonies which helps you to inspect and adapt. So today we have with us Sandhya, who comes with 10 plus years of experience in product and project management. She has handled multiple Scrum teams, and currently she is working with Cvent as Agile Project Manager. So today she'll tell us how do we retrospect using data. So welcome Sandhya, stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Jyoti. Thank you, Nupur. Thank you, Agile Network India, for giving me this opportunity to present. So without any delay, I'll just share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes, Sandhya, we can.
All right. So we have a lovely audience here. So thank you so much, guys, for joining. So I am Sandhya. All right, so I'm Sandhya, and today's meetup, as Jyoti briefed, is all about learning ways to identify avenues to inspect and adapt effectively using data. So what could be a better start than starting with Albert Einstein quote, who once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again, but expecting different results. Yet we would have seen projects and businesses often avoid change because traditional project management relies on adapting goals and outcomes to the process rather than adopting the process to the goals. So I believe Albert Einstein himself understood why it's important to run retrospectives, though I'm certain he wouldn't have used the term. So that's why he said the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And as we start our presentation, we should remember this line. Now look at the analogy wherein one should think like a chef and not cook. Now the cook is just following the recipes, and if an ingredient is missing, he may be completely lost and would not know how to continue following his recipe. On the other hand, a chef has the skills and experience to adapt to a situation and create delicious recipes with any ingredients that are available in the kitchen. So that's also called adaptive management, which we can see as an example from our own personal lives, which includes the basic principles of agile project management, such as iterative processes, and one has to have the creative business environments to have that. In addition, adaptive project management involves the active use of quantitative methods to measure project performance and apply learnings to improve decisions. And that's what this presentation is going to talk about today. Now, while we are looking at these analogies, let's also understand the need of retrospectives. We keep talking about retrospectives. No matter how good a Scrum team is, there is always an opportunity to improve. Although a good Scrum team will always be looking for improvement opportunities, but there should definitely be a dedicated period at the end of sprint to reflect back on what we are doing and what are different ways to improve further. Now, retrospectives provide you a platform to celebrate success and think about the failures. Now, they should encourage participation, sharing of interests and views, taking the team towards an amicable solution. Now, the primary importance of sprint retrospective is that it allows the team to identify the potential pitfalls at an early stage, not at later stages, and resolve those conflicting areas. Hence, retrospectives give you and your time the chance to stop doing things that are not working and to start doing things that should work instead. Hence, retrospectives are vital to important to the health of any of the teams. Now, you can't expect to realize all the benefits in just one go. You can focus on just some things and you will start seeing those benefits in the near future as we move into the different iterations. You must also have seen there is a very strong relationship between agile and retrospectives. If you're using Scrum, most retrospectives are run at the end of every sprint. The output of a retrospective is one or more action items, and these action items are then fed into the following iteration to adapt to new learnings and changes. Hence, they are closely coupled. Now we follow so many retrospective techniques. We follow Sad, Mad, Glad. We follow sailboat technique. We follow starfish technique. But do you see that there is something that is still missing in your retrospectives after all these techniques? Yes. Lack of focus, buying, genuine insight, lack of participation, lack of follow-through. So these are some of the common problems. So after using all the techniques, did you ever feel your team is committing the same mistakes over and over? Do you feel that they are not moving in the right direction and you need to drive in some change? Now, what would be that change? You will also see cases when people might think everything is looking good. I think we don't need retrospectives at all because we are doing well. We need not do retrospective at the end of every cycle. You must have heard these lines very repeatedly from people in the team. So as we always say, the retrospective is the most important meeting to help the continuous improvement to happen. So let's be honest, if someone thinks everything is fine, it's very likely that this is also an issue in the team and it's something that Scrum Master also needs to explore. So how to approach this problem? The answer is data-driven retrospectives. We lack that data. We don't always look at that data. Even if we look at that data, we sometimes miss generating insights from that data. So data-driven approach is all about extracting valuable metrics related to the team itself, making them accessible to everyone and bringing awareness to the team. If you bring the matrix and create a culture of showing the numbers to the team in every retrospective, they'll always be able to compare themselves with past cycles and discuss their performance. Now, a quick example could be the velocity. I think we all keep talking about velocity everywhere. So let's say your team usually ships 40 story points and now this time they ship 28 story points. Now, why did it happen? Maybe because there were a lot of dev issues to fix. Maybe requirements were not clear, hence the deliveries could not happen. Maybe some team members were on unplanned sick leaves or maybe some other errands. And maybe there were very few people in the team, which we did not anticipate when we started the iteration. So data can help you to reach to the root cause of any issue in a more promising manner. And it provides you further insights which are not otherwise easily visible. At the same time, the experience that you have while you were in that sprint with the team, that validation of thought also happens using data. Now you'll see the importance of data in all stages of project, from the inception of an idea of a project to the successful delivery of a project. Now let's look at the significance of data in project execution. Now, if you're applying Scrum, so you're actually signing up for 3 pillars of empirical process control. That is transparency, inspection, and adaptation. So that means in a fact-based, experience-based, and evidence-based manner. So without data, how will you know whether your actions are leading to a stronger team practices and customer outcomes? How will you know whether your practice experiments went positively or negatively, and how do they impact the outcomes? Do you know what your baseline is? Whether you are tracking above or below that? If you do not have all this data, how will you measure that whether you are doing right or wrong? So different organizations normally look at a different range of matrices to manage, measure, observe, and analyze the performance of the project. The ability to analyze the performance of a project objectively and make rational and informed decision plays a very important part in project success. And hence, it keeps you very realistic about your plans, and not just you, but the team members, stakeholders, everyone. So basically, analyzing project data can also help project managers predict the way stakeholders will react to key decisions, and will tell whether a project is on schedule, hence keeping expectations right, and early identification of areas of improvement. Hence, you'll be able to prioritize and mitigate your risk also beforehand. So if you are taking a data-driven approach to a project management, you'll find that your projects are more likely to be delivered in time. At the same time, it gives you an opportunity to pause and revisit if something is really working for your team or not. At last, obviously, one has to be, this can only be successful when you are transparent, accountable, self-directed, and you have an adaptive team culture in your team. So now the question is, what sort of data should be brought in? Into your retrospectives, as we always keep living in a huge ocean of data all the time. Now, conceptually, we need to understand there are 2 primary sources of data. The Scrum team can analyze objective data and subjective data. So let's understand them one by one. Now, objective data is all about something which can be measured and verified. It is also referred to as hard data. There is nearly a limitless amount of objective data you can bring to your retrospectives, like cycle time, number of product backlog items which actually turned into your product increments, ratio of production issues to the feature work that you did, number of defects escaping to the system, to the production system, amount of anticipated work at the beginning of this sprint versus work done or delivered at the end of this sprint. So let's dive into a very few data points, which are my personal favorites, honestly. As you can see, the ones highlighted in bold here, burn down charts. Now we look at burn down charts. Now, looking at these burn down charts should always lead to some of the questions that we should be asking to ourselves first and then to the team members. So suppose your burn down chart is showing that we were ahead of schedule and then fell behind, and then your chart also went up. So now you can start asking some questions. Why were we ahead of schedule at the beginning of this sprint? Why did our productivity was flatline in the middle of this sprint? Why burn down chart was going up? Was there an additional scope in the sprint? Why did we have to adopt some of these stuff? Why we couldn't stick to the plan? So what can we do to avoid repeating this sort of scenario in the next iteration? Say in another scenario, estimated versus remaining. So the organizations who are not just dealing in story points, but are also estimating in hours or updating the remaining hours in their stories or tickets. So that will be a good metric for them. So for example, did new items get inserted into the backlog mid-sprint? You'll be able to know if your estimated time gets increased. So how did that happen? What can we do to avoid that in the future? Did our initial estimates from sprint planning underestimate the complexity of our task? So in that case, your remaining time would have got increased. So you should be looking at all those data for your own consumption, and yet then sharing those insights with the team, and then team can discuss that, okay, yes, these problems existed or they did not. Next one is velocity. I think everyone's favorite. So as you know, team velocity is the number of completed story points over an iteration. If you track this across time, you'll be able to analyze your team's trend for sure. Your goal should not be to increase velocity every sprint. Instead, if your velocity is increasing, you should ask why. If it is decreasing, then also you should be asking why. So similarly, stories delivered versus planned, what were the past trends, why is there a difference now, say logged hours versus capacity versus planned hours, are there a major difference in these metrics? If yes, what is the root cause? Do we need to improve on our estimates, or were there some unanticipated issues? Were there drags? Can there be something which can be improved on infra level itself, which is not in team's control at coding level or anywhere else? Or at process level? Are teams being distracted a lot by external factors, that they have to do external reviews or they have to provide support to the other teams? Is there a lot of context switching that you're seeing amongst your team members? So these are some of the hidden issues that you can start looking at once you start looking at this data. And probably not everyone will raise those issues in the retrospectives unless we also start looking at some data that, okay, these are the problems that exist. Then there could be some other matrix also, time in status, that if a story is being in a status for a very long time, for example, in review. Now start understanding why reviews are taking so much of time. Are you not the repo owner? Is your team not the repo owner? Is it some other team? Is the team in a different time zone altogether? Should we have repo owners in our time zone itself? So you should be talking about these things, and that review time and the time that is being spent in a status can definitely give you some insights around that data. Then you can discuss with your team members. One important factor, I don't know, not everyone probably looks at that, time spent in meetings. We all know that meetings are not inherently good or bad. Some meetings add value and others don't. But it is certainly true that the more time we spent in meetings, the less time you have for your work. Also look at percent of time spent on bugs, features, ad hoc requests, drags, number of prod issues which have been adopted in the sprint itself. So these are some of the things that you can really look at. One last thing, which I would like to give a lot of importance on, is the business data that we can definitely share with our team members. So apart from technical and engineering specific data, since purpose of application is to deliver value to the customer, then it makes sense to also inspect business data in your retrospectives, like NPS. NPS is a net promoter score. So NPS surveys normally ask, how likely are you to recommend this product to a friend? So by looking at NPS data across time, you can tell whether the product features you are adding are resulting into increased happiness among your customers. If not, why? If the curve is flat, okay, there has been no feedback yet. So maybe the usage has not happened to that level. Perhaps you're prioritizing the wrong user stories if it is going down, or perhaps your product owner is not talking to the customer very frequently. That's why there is a gap in the expectation. So without looking at NPS, you would never know all that. So there are many more types of data. There is CSAT as well, customer satisfaction score, that may also you might be looking at and should be sharing with the teams. So think about what is relevant for your team. Bring whatever that is important for your next retrospective. You should be bringing that data and see what happens and what sort of impact does it start making for the long term. Now, another kind of data, that is subjective data. Subjective data includes personal opinions, feelings, and emotions on the team. Whereas objective data presents the facts, but subjective data can reveal what your team thinks is important about the facts. Now here you're combining objective data with the subjective data. Now, subjective data is also sometimes referred to as soft data. Now, analytical people sometimes scoff at subjective data. Just give me the facts. Who care about what we feel or how we feel? But we all are humans and we are not machines. So we are emotional beings. And sometimes it's impossible to fully understand what happened using objective data alone. So we can't ignore the subjective data as well. What sort of subjective data we should be looking at? Highs and lows. Throughout the iteration, your team members will experience different tons of emotions. Sometimes they'll be happy, sometimes they'll be motivated. So other times, some people on your team might feel annoyed or frustrated. It's important to recognize that the emotional state of your team will likely have an impact on their productivity for sure. So creating a structured way for people to talk about their feelings makes it comfortable to raise topics that have an emotional charge. When people avoid emotional content, it never goes away. It has to be addressed. It just goes underground and saps energy and motivation. Now you could measure engagement, empowerment, satisfaction, self-governance, and other emotion you want to consider. Then you have mad, sad, glad. It's also one of the retrospective techniques, but you can ask them that what did they were happy about? Do they want to acknowledge each other? Was the team supporting each other? What do they think they lacked in the iteration? What did they learn? What did they long for in the iteration? Then there is another technique, team radar. So now it's also a mix of objective and subjective data, which you can do in your retrospectives. So sometimes you'll run into situations in which certain members of your team push back on the use of subjective data also, because they are hard fact savvy. So they do not want to just talk about feelings and emotions. If that's the situation you find yourself in, you can use this team radar and to create subjective data that is more quantifiable. So team radar is a technique that uses individual numeric ratings to provide a sense of how the overall team is feeling on various aspects of its work. For example, you might run a team radar based on 5 Scrum values. How was our commitment, courage, focus, openness, and respect? So you would ask everyone to think about how well they think the team is doing on each of these 5 values, and then write down a rating from 1 to 5. So then you can map out the responses in a radar diagram. Another way is running anonymous surveys as well. So before running the retro, you can run these surveys, and then based on that data, you discuss those items with the team. Now, once you have collected this data, ask everyone from what they notice. There could be many observations. Was commitment an issue? Or is trust an issue? Was focus an issue? Was there a lot of context switching? The team around, from this information, you can start diving in deeper on a particular topic. For example, you could spend the rest of your retrospective talking about the commitments, how we can increase the commitments, or how we can ensure that what we are committing is what we are delivering. So there could be different topics that you might be discovering after doing these things. Now, this slide particularly talks about Jira, which we most frequently use, and there could be other tools as well, but it focuses more on what sort of data we can really look at different places. Now, when I say different places, here I have identified 3 avenues as we talked in the start of the presentation, because this presentation will also tell you what are those avenues. Daily stand-ups, sprint retro, quarterly retros. Now they can be rolled up to a year, to a 6 months, a year. So you can roll up this data into any forms. But in daily stand-ups, you can really look down at burn down charts. Now, because that will tell you what are your outstanding work. It is useful for predicting when all the work will be completed, or when different work items which are important from delivery perspective will also be completed. Then you have Jira Sprint Health Gadget as well. So it summarizes the essential matrix in a sprint. Like it tells you how much time has been elapsed, how much have you completed, who's working on what on this sprint. It will also give people an immediate sense of any trouble or challenge that we see, that we are delayed on something already. Because if you're dealing in sprint, it will eventually reflect back on your quarter plan and eventually will reflect back on your product roadmap delivery as well. Remaining estimate is another way of looking at data, that what time is remaining. If remaining time has got increased, then you can very well see that, okay, there was a discovered scope probably, or there was a technical discovered scope wherein developer, while planning the story or after starting the implementation, realized that, okay, these are also the areas that I had to look at, but I did not anticipate them when the sprint was started, or when the planning was done, or when the commitments were being made. Then drag and overhead time is one data that you must be looking at, because, and this is one of my personal favorites as well. So if people are logging time correctly, so whatever time they are losing while they are working on the sprint work they have been assigned to, so if drags are being logged correctly, they'll be able to see, and you will also be able to see that what is that area wherein my team is getting drags every now and then. And this is an area that I should be working on now. It can be an infra issue, it can be the external reviews, it can be external support, it can be your Jenkins build failures, it can be your production monitoring, production alerts, wherein you have to ad hoc on an ad hoc basis work on that. So you should be looking at all that data. Rate boards. So you should also, it can also help you remind on what are your risk and dependencies in even the daily stand-ups. So if team is still blocked on a particular piece of work, say somebody is working on a story, or somebody's about to pick the next story, and wherein we knew that we were dependent on a framework team, right, for a component, because we wanted to use a reusable component. So now whether that component has been delivered or not. So if you're looking at your rate boards and DSMs, you'll be able to see all those things. Now, you can also look at different widgets you can create in your dashboards, which might tell you bugs which are nearing SLA, any SEV 1, SEV 2s if they were received lately, then tickets which are certified but their status probably was not moved, or they are not released but they were needed to be released. So a developer's ownership is always to take the code to the production. So it does not stop in just silo certification state, rather the production certification stage. So all these metrics can really help you to have those insights. Similarly, in sprint retros, you can look at different metrics. Again, the burn down charts, that how did you perform in your sprint? What did you commit? What did you deliver? How much did you adopt? If we are logging time, then you can look at what was my capacity, what did I plan, what was the logged time. Then you can also compare this log time with the drags time, that, okay, for example, your capacity was 200 hours for your all team members, and you had 180 hours logged and 20 hours were your drags. So now, what were these drags? How can we reduce them down in the future? So we should be looking at all this data just to have those insights and have those discussions started. Then you should also be looking at what was the discovered scope in the stories we had. So there could be different type of discovered scopes. It could be a technical discovered scope. It could be the discovered scope because the mockups changed. It could be a discovered scope that product changed some of the requirements, or the product probably thought something in some manner, and when we implemented that, probably that was not feasible. So we had to change the approach there. In quarterly retros as well, you can really look down and at these charts, then team velocity trend, that how we have performed as a team, then how was the overall discovered scope. Now you should be looking at that, not just at sprint level, not just at story level, ticket level, but at a quarter level, or maybe if you are reviewing after 6 months or a year, you should be looking at discovered scope in an epic. So it depends on how organization tags their stories under an epic or an initiative. So we should be looking at, the purpose is to see that if something was delivered late or something was delivered early for that matter as well, whether it was a discovered scope, whether something was withdrawn, whether there was an approach in the implementation or design altogether that we had to withdraw some of these stuff. But there should be visibility around these things, that what are those reasons. Then what were the total estimate deviations at the time when we did probably the PI planning, the quarterly planning, and when we did sprint planning, and when we did deliver. So deviation between these things will definitely give you insights to have those learnings in place. Then timelines which were anticipated for your commitments and versus actual. Then business value which was delivered is another important aspect. For example, when we started the quarter, we assigned a business value point of say 8 on the scale of 1 to 10. And then towards the end of the quarter, we saw that we started seeing business value based on timeliness, scope, and quality of the product. And we discovered that the business value which was delivered was probably 7. So we should be discussing around these things, that how much business value has been delivered by the teams as well. So we should be talking about these things. Then definitely you can, you are rolling up all these things on your dashboards for a quarter, wherein you're looking at what was the shipped SLA of your team, how many prod issues you received, how many prod issues you resolved, what was the most buggy epic, which area was the most buggy one. Now it will also help you in driving those decisions, whether we should be doing a bug bash again instead of customers finding those bugs later in the production. Should we ourselves also test this again and again, because we see that we are receiving a lot of bugs. Maybe the implementation approach was just so complicated that few scenarios were just unhandled. Maybe product should be revisiting on some of these strategies there. So we should be talking about these things. And then what were the adopted tickets throughout the quarter, and we should also be looking at quarterly hours logged by category, which means that if time logging is happening in any of the organizations, so we should be looking at that data as well. For example, we defined that our prod allocation is 20% and your 10% goes to service ownership and other tasks, and your 70% goes to the feature allocation. Now towards the end of the quarter, just look at whether the allocations that you defined in the start of the quarter, whether they were exactly the ones or not, whether that 20% of prod allocation was used or not, whether it was 5% or it was 30%, so that you can do a more realistic planning next time. So these are some of the snapshots I pulled from Jira for burn down charts, remaining estimate chart, sprint gadget. This is not too visible, but in one of the matrix I talked about that we should be looking at drag hours per category. So here you can see these drag hours are based on that how much time was logged in Jenkins and builds, network and hardware issues, silo instability, T2 and staging issues, troubleshooting, then branch and down merge conflicts, external PR reviews, external support, internal support, because when we have new joinees in the team, then the existing people have to help, and then their work sometimes get dragged, and we should be measuring that as well sometimes when it is happening beyond, or if somebody really feels concerned about it. Then we should be looking at the regression scripts that we are analyzing or fixing or maintaining, and then how much time is being spent in the releases as well. So we should be looking at all that data. Then these are some of the graphs that you can present to your teams before presenting the insights on if there was a difference. Then these are some of the categories. This is from one of my teams, and I thought I should be presenting some example here, that we tracked sprint after sprint, that how much time was spent there. Then we looked at, okay, which is the area wherein we are constantly receiving those drags. Now that should be the area that you should be talking about in quarterly retros as well. Similarly, discovered scope, for example, what was the discovered scope type, whether it was because of changing requirements, technical scope, UX, how many hours were logged. Even if you're not logging, you can just look at based on estimates that whatever was the discovered scope, how much was that estimated discovered scope, because it will help you to retrospect in the future. If something is constantly happening with the product, for example, that for an epic or for second epic, for third epic, we have seen that there is always a discovered scope, and that always jeopardizes our plans, that always impacts our deliveries, or in turn, hence it is definitely impacting the commitments that we are making to our customers. So we will be able to reach to the exact root cause if you start looking at these metrics. Now, there are many other ways of presenting facts. I do not want to drown you into this ocean of matrix, but I definitely want to present this plethora of possibilities that we should be looking at, or we can be looking at these matrix based on our organization needs, team needs, or whatever suits our organization. Now, sometimes we should also look at planned versus actual leaves in sprint, because sometimes I remember in one of the quarters, which was when we were badly hit by COVID in India in the month of April and May. So we really started looking at this, and then we started thinking about how we can handle our project better, or how those communications can be done better, that what is getting impacted, or if there is something else which can be taken care of by maybe some other team wherein people have the availability. So had we not seen these metrics, we would not have been able to take those decisions so confidently, because something which is important for the organizations from delivery perspective, important for the customer to receive, important for our customer retention as well at the same time, but something we are not able to see, how to make those changes, how to maybe bring some more people in the team, or pass on the work to some other team wherein people are available. So such decisions can definitely be made when you start looking at these data. Then features planned versus feature delivered in the sprint. As I shared earlier, features and prod allocation versus planned and actual, service ownership allocation, because we keep building the stuff on and on and on, but then you have to make some upgrades, then you have to maintain your services, your repos. So all of that time you should be seeing that, you should be planning all that time, and you should also be tracking that how much have we spent on these activities, and for next quarter what are the corrections that you should be making, or for next year, while the roadmap also is being considered, so that everyone remains communicated that okay, these are the considerations one has to make, instead of just talking about this is the project contingency I'm keeping, and it cannot be same for all the projects. So if you'll have a handful of these insights from this data, you'll be able to make better decisions. Then you can't ignore the training part. You have to upskill your teams all the time, right? So you should be factoring in these tasks, training tasks as well in the start of your quarter while you are doing your capacity planning. Then you should never forget the framework dependencies, or the dependencies that are there on other teams. We should all be talking about these things in our sprint retros as well. And then, as I told earlier, if you will be looking at the slippages that we made, or the achievements, the extra achievements we made in this sprint, you will be able to judge your quarter health in much better way. Maybe team needs more work because they finished their work than what was planned in terms of timeline. Maybe they were not able to deliver, and there were some drags, there were some natural drags which we could not control. So all of these insights will definitely at sprint level will help you judge your quarter health right in the middle or in the start of your quarter as well. Then in quarterly retros also, you can look at different matrix like consolidated view of quarterly stats, quarterly leaves. Maybe people are not marking leaves in the calendar correctly, and on the runtime, every time when customer commitments have been made already, and we realize, okay, people are taking leaves much more than maybe 50% more or 25% more, and it's a trend that we saw in the quarter. So we can guide here to the team members that this is how it impacts our commitments to the customers, or as a team we are collectively committing a feature for a customer. So this is how these things can impact. So we should be talking about these things very openly to your team members. Then definitely subjective learnings can definitely help, as we always do. Reiterating retros learnings in DSM sometimes creates a lot of difference. For example, someone forgot to move the status of a ticket, and now that person goes on leave. We don't know whether the PR is merged or not, and the person is unwell. So now one of the retro learnings you can reiterate there, we have to keep the tickets in right status. So this is a very small example, just from a point of view of how sometimes reiterating these learnings in retros, in DSMs can also help. Then in sprint retros, we should be tracking and closing last retros items. We should be reiterating the last retro learnings and appreciating on the good work. And then we should be tracking the commitments that we made and also tracking the business value of them. Same gets rolled up in the quarterly retro at just a larger level. One suggestion I would make, in quarterly retro, we can't touch face with all the problems that we had at hand during different sprints. Or maybe if we are reviewing after 6 months or we are reviewing after 12 months, you should always touch base on top 5 pain points and discuss their solutions right there, because solutions are mostly right there within the teams. And then coming up with those action items within the teams. And at the same time, don't forget to reiterate the lessons that we learned from different sprints, and don't forget to appreciate your people. So they are great motivators for a great performance. Now, next slide talks about steps to make data-driven retrospectives effective. So remember, if you're taking data into your retros for the first time, you might actually be changing team behaviors. And I'm sure some of you might already be thinking that how people will take that data presentation, and so go gently and build a repeatable habit of presenting the insights from your data in every retro. It will be much easier to embrace the use of data as that familiarity builds. So what you can do here is define an agility matrix framework that's flexible enough to help you focus on improving different agility outcomes over time. So collect matrix around your team's workflow, review, collaboration, and communication practices. Just an example, your people are not asking or discussing a lot of things, or they're not raising things on your common channels, communication channels. So that can be one thing which you saw that because people were not communicating well, maybe they did not follow up on PR review as well, and it was needed. So those things are something. So you basically have to identify those metrics for your teams. So for example, long waiting times, tech leads should be looking at quality metrics from code perspective. Product managers should be spotting that if there are any recurring blockers from maybe UX side, or maybe the requirements were changing, or there was a new scope getting added. So basically one has to identify these agile delivery metrics to ensure that we are doing a holistic real-time team health check. Now, second is get the information flowing and build a platform of common understanding around these facts. You'll be able to gather reports from your delivery tools. Jira is one tool, Tableau, or whatever tools your organization is using. So utilize those tools to generate that information. And generally, people don't like changing behaviors. There can be fear and uncertainty on why data is being introduced in retros and how is it going to be applied. So reinforce a culture of listening, trust, and support. Stamp out blaming and voice offs. Ensure language adopts a tone of collective responsibility. So instead of you or me or I, start saying we and our. So if individuals are called out, sometimes you may ask, okay, this was the problem with the story. So do we want to talk about it? So ensure it is very constructive. Otherwise, it can be taken in a wrong manner as well. So believe that everyone has done their best job, given that they knew at the time with their skills, abilities, and resources available for the situation at hand. And don't forget this line ever. So keep that in your mind all the time. Your goal as a facilitator is to move team away from sitting on the fence to embracing data-informed conversations in an active way. Now, the guiding principle for the retro is to review on-game performance for the cycle and identify what are the improvisations or improvements which can be done in the next cycle. Now, always come up with an agenda or identify an agenda from a retro. Sometimes while you are in DSMs, you can, if people start, for example, a SEV 1 was received in between and you obviously had to adopt that in your sprint. So people start retrospecting that SEV 1 in the DSMs itself. So it's good to talk about that, but you can always use those labels called retrospect later, and you can bring these sort of things from DSMs itself in your sprint retro, and you can discuss about them. And always come up with an agenda, of course, with a precise action item. We'll talk about it in our next slides. But one word of caution for sure. Finally, in this sprint of fast feedback loops, avoid waiting for the next retro for improvements. Your data should be available in real time. Why not to retrospect in real time? Now, some of the basic principles.
Hey, Sandhya, just would like to, sorry for interrupting. We are left with just 2 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you could wrap up for us.
Yes, definitely. So this is something that probably I need not reiterate this. This stuff I believe will be uploaded. So you can just go through these things. These are general principles collected from different sources. The last thing which is important, wherein I would like to utilize these 2 minutes, would be very important. Diverge to brainstorm impediments. So first of all, just open the room for discussing, okay, what are different impediments or what are different things that we want to talk about. Then converge on a single impediment or a retro point that you want to talk about. Then diverge to brainstorm what are the possible solutions to that. And then converge on a single action item. This is how probably you'll be able to reach what are the proper action items for a problem statement. So what do you reach? You'll be able to reach an action item that should be specific. So for example, it's about backlog items, not work more broadly. They should be measurable. There should be a number, for example, 3 backlog items, attainable. The team should have control over it. Relevant, we believe it will help. Time-based, in our next planning meeting, we'll discuss this, or by this time, this should be resolved. So basically, your retro action items have to be precise in a manner. The SMART principle is generally being followed by writing user stories, but they have to be followed while writing retro action items as well. That's it. Time for questions.
Yes, Sandhya, I see a couple of questions, but we'll be able to take just 1 or 2. So the first one, which I would like to ask, so Amar has asked this question. So in work from home culture, how do we measure soft data?
So soft data, first of all, in work from home culture, we have to create a culture wherein people have to still be open, and we have seen generally people don't switch on their videos and cameras as well, and then you see there are new people joining in the team as well, how difficult it is for them as well. So I think for this, some team building games for that openness, for trust building, you can really play truth and lies. And for basically team building, games definitely help in generating that sort of openness and trust, so that people start opening up. And to measure that soft data there, when they are open, they will automatically be sharing what they are feeling. So as I shared earlier, we have to be constructive in whatever we are sharing through the data as well. It doesn't have to be like we are pointing onto someone. It doesn't have to be like a blame game sort of stuff wherein we are blaming something on somebody. That data has to be driven or presented in a very careful manner. And when we are talking about soft data here, then I think the key is the openness and trust team members usually have, and making people understand on importance of a particular scrum ceremony, or a particular belief is just through talking. Maybe you can have a one-on-one with the people so that you get to know, and then in one-on-ones you can tell that you should be raising those points in retros itself. So we should encourage people to speak in retros, so that if somebody is feeling something, maybe the other person is also feeling, but they did not share in one-on-one as well. So that will encourage the culture of speaking up things openly, talking about the problems openly, and hence finding out those solutions.
Okay. Thank you, Sandhya, for such an insightful session. We all learned how data can help us in those retrospectives. Apologies for other questions which I couldn't take up, but you guys can connect to Sandhya on LinkedIn and discuss your questions, queries. And yeah, that's a wrap from us. Over to you, Nupur.
Thank you, everybody. Prashant here. Thank you, Sandhya, for your insightful session. And thanks, Jyoti, for facilitating